If you've been reading the news for any measure of time, then you're aware that James Gunn is one of the new heads at DC Films. Now, whether or not this is good news is really up to you, but in this video, I want to talk about this. Specifically, I want to talk about Superman, focusing on what DC Films previously got wrong and how James Gunn can make the Man of Steel more in line with what Superman is supposed to be about. So my complaints about the depiction of Superman from his introduction during The Man of Steel up until now are not that different from many others. While I think Henry Cavill was an amazing casting choice, his character was written as a flawed superhero, more in line with a brooding or cynical person. In fact, I agree with ScreenHub when they were writing about the Man of Steel film, and they said, Clark Kent opens up the movie as a drifter, unsure of his place in the world, much like Bruce Wayne in Batman Begins. These quiet parts are the strongest part of the film, offering a bit more exploration into a figure who's a product of two worlds, but a member of none. Indeed, there was a somber tone to these moments that brought a level of humanity to an inhuman being. But despite the beauty of these moments, everything else completely missed the point of Superman. Even as the film progressed and Lois Lane was introduced as the anchor that brought Superman back to the world, he stepped into the role of a superhero unwillingly. He had no desire to fight General Zod or his forces, even knowing what they would do to the world. But even when the battle came, it contained no semblance of hope or a brighter tomorrow. Where this could have been written off as Superman figuring himself out, his subsequent appearances all had the same tone: dark, brooding, and cynical. The question of whether or not humanity was worth saving permeated every single appearance he had and transformed the Man of Steel into the man of misanthropy. What's funny is that this was by design. In 2018, Screen Rant posted an article where Zack Snyder confirmed to a fan that injustice was the inspiration for Batman's vision of the future in Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice. But Batman's vision, combined with the overall tone of everything, point to the idea that injustice was Snyder's inspiration for his entire depiction of the DC universe. And if this really is true, then that's a problem. Injustice was a story where the Joker tricked Superman into killing his wife and unborn child, which basically sent him down the path of becoming a ruthless dictator. But the reason Injustice was so significant was that it was not a normal Superman. The story stood in stark contrast to the Superman that we knew, which made the death of his family all the more tragic and his response even more shocking. But it's not the story to use as a model for the Man of Steel, because Superman is not dark, he's not brooding, and he's not cynical. In fact, he's the exact opposite. To my point about Superman searching for identity, in 2013, Brian Truitt wrote an article for USA Today titled, "Why Superman is the Greatest American Hero." In the article, Truitt wrote, "Searching for identity is a very human concept for sure, but what makes Superman and his alter ego Clark Kent the ultimate American hero is that he reflected our culture and society ever since his first appearance in Action Comics #1 in 1938. His crash landing in a cornfield as a baby and being raised by two Kansas farmers is, in a way, the story of the American immigrant." In the same article, Julian Chambliss, a history professor at Rollins University, said, "The core narrative in Superman always has and continues to be the values and belief about the U.S. experience being strong enough and good enough to address the troubles of the generation engaged with its character." And comic book writer Mark Waid added, "Superman marched with the troops and fought the Axis powers during World War II, but he was also a reaction to industrialization, to the power of big business. He was created as a social agitator, a character who fought for the oppressed and the weak. In the 1950s, Superman went from anti-authority to a kind of uber cop, since the post-war era is where we saw ourselves as the world's peacekeepers. And then the 1960s and 70s had stories that touched on the counterculture and young people not really having a sense of who they were or where they were going. The reason I say all of this is that Superman satisfies our inner child yearning to be saved from the struggles that plague us. Superman represents hope, and while almost none of Superman's appearances in the DCEU quite lived up to it, Russell Crowe's quote from The Man of Steel perfectly defines Superman in saying, "You will give the people of Earth an ideal to strive towards. They will race behind you, they will stumble, they will fall. But in time, they will join you in the sun. In time, you will help them accomplish wonders. So before we continue with this video, we do want to say thank you to our sponsor, Atlas VPN. And right now, you can have a private Christmas and a safe New Year because you can get Atlas VPN Premium for just $170 a month plus 6 months extra with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Now, this is the best Atlas VPN offer of the year, so make sure you guys are quick and make sure that you get your deal by clicking on the link in the video description because it's a limited time offer. Now, I know you guys are thinking, does Rob really use Atlas VPN? Yes, I actually use Atlas VPN because these things are dead useful, and I love using this because it's so affordable. So one of the great things about a VPN, specifically even Atlas VPN, is geo-restriction. As a lot of you guys know, different companies out there will only allow certain parts of the world to access different types of content. And if you're an American that decides to travel abroad to some place like London, or if you're somebody from London who decides to travel to the United States, or any combination of any nations across the world, you guys know that you may not be able to access content across the internet from your home country. Well, Atlas VPN makes that entirely possible for you. Now, this also comes with other benefits, like being able to block malware or being able to hide your IP address from other services. And it's insanely cool because it actually keeps companies from being able to track you, which is really what I think is one of the better things here. So again, with the Christmas deal they're running, you can get Atlas VPN for just $170 a month plus 6 months extra with a 30-day money-back guarantee. And again, it's the best Atlas VPN offer of the year. So make sure you guys are quick and get your deal by clicking the link below that's inside the video description because it really is a limited time offer. But with that being said, guys, let's get back into our video. And so all of that being said, with James Gunn and DC Films relaunching Superman, what should their inspiration be? What kind of Superman should they present to the world? Well, as Superman's been around for almost 100 years, he certainly has no shortage of stories to adapt, but only a few really stand at the top of the list. In my mind, the feel of James Gunn's Superman should draw from 3 stories: Superman for All Seasons, Peace on Earth, and All-Star Superman. Now, starting with a Superman for All Seasons, the beauty of this story is its simplicity. The origin of Superman is ingrained in us as American society, almost as if we're born with this knowledge. And instead of focusing on the destruction of Krypton, a Superman for All Seasons takes place almost entirely in Smallville. There are events that take place in Metropolis, and they do influence some of the things that happen in Smallville, but the emphasis is placed on Superman's hometown, the importance of this town, the people in his life, and how the lessons of his friends and family transformed him from a small-town boy with incredible powers to the hero that stands as an inspiration to both humanity and the larger superhero community. Superman for All Seasons has no questions of whether or not humanity's worth saving. There's no angst, broodiness, or cynicism towards the human race. Instead, Superman's initial concern about using his powers out in the world are focused on whether or not humanity will accept him and if he's even ready for that level of responsibility. But if Superman for All Seasons focuses on Clark coming to terms with his powers and his role in the world, Peace on Earth shows how he handles adversity. This story follows Superman in his efforts to solve world hunger, and while he doesn't succeed and his efforts are ultimately sabotaged, there are no fights with Doomsday or Darkseid, and there's no Lex Luthor shining green kryptonite in his face. Instead, Superman's adversity comes in realizing that he can't force humanity to stop fighting wars. He cannot permanently prevent a dictator from seizing the donated food for himself. He cannot change human nature. But instead of ending with a feeling of hopelessness, the story ends with Superman recognizing that the best he can do is try to show humanity a better way, and recognizing that for every one person who stood in his path, 2 people thanked him for his actions. And so finally, All-Star Superman is arguably the greatest Superman story ever written. And while it does contain your standard fare of Superman versus the bad guy style conflicts, its largest emphasis is on Superman's impending death, his legacy, and the world he leaves behind. It's, in effect, the conclusion of everything that makes Superman, Superman. Giving Lois Lane his powers for 24 hours allows her to experience the world through his eyes, to see and hear as he does, the cries for help, the songs of his praise, and the pain of doing what he can where he can, but knowing he can't be there for everyone. During that time, Lois had never felt more connected to both Superman and humanity and the world. Lex Luthor is granted a momentary view of what the world could look like from Superman's perspective, and its beauty is enough to bring Lex Luthor to tears. To tell the truth, the Superman that we've seen over the course of the DCEU is not the worst that we've ever seen, and I want to be clear in saying that not everything about his depiction was bad. But Superman is not supposed to be flawed. Sure, he doesn't always know what the right answer is to every question, but unlike humans who are flawed, who are reactionary, who only realize an action was a mistake after we've committed to that act, Superman should represent hope for a better tomorrow and a hope for what humanity can become.